gonna share with the next few slides, and I try to, let's say, keep it very simple and quick, is our more or less state of the art, what alternative fuels are out there, what are the benefits, what are our experiences, to share this one, and then of course everybody can jump in regarding their already existing information. So all over, let's say all alternative fuels on the modern way are subsumized in the XTL term, which stands for X2 liquid. At the end, we are using something, the X, and translate it to liquid. In detail, we have the GTL, which is gas to liquid, coming out of natural gas, and then it's transferred with chemical magic into a diesel. The next one is HVO, hydrotreated vegetable oil, which is coming out of old oil, food waste, and so on. Again, chemistry, and bring it into a diesel pendant. In theory, BTL, biomass to liquid, would be the third interesting option, but realistically, that's not really in a bigger scale yet available. And it's from the production concept a bit different to HVO, but similar to that. But just that it's mentioned, the BTL is there. And then last but not least, which is as well a bit more in the news in the latest months, is the so-called e-fuel. And that one is out of hydrogen and CO2. In the best case, you take the CO2 out of the air, bring it together with hydrogen, and then again, you bake a new diesel. And if the hydrogen was coming out of renewable energy and you take the CO2 out of the air, when you burn this liquid, you're just bringing back the CO2, which was already in the air, which from all what was listed now, is the only one which could be really CO2 neutral. All the others are producing CO2, but less than fossil diesel. We're coming to this one in a second. In principle, I'm coming to, on the next slide, to a precondition. In principle, all of those fluids could be used pure or blended with fossil diesel, which is especially on the HVO, at least from the European side, already standard, because there are already minimum percentages in normal diesel, which you have on the gas station applied. And as well, this ratio going to be increased in the future because of the European Union emission regulations and so on. So it's just the ongoing track, and we are trying to be there as well. So first of all, the good news, all the actual pre-nut vehicles are able to run with such fluids, which we mentioned on the page before, as long as they are consistent with the specific norm, which is the EN 15940. But at the end, every manufacturer or supplier of such a liquid is following this norm, because otherwise they would be out of the market. So that's not the real topic, to not find the proper norm or specification. There are other things to be considered, which are coming later on.
Hey, Andreas, while you're on the slide, the EN rating, that's a European equivalent of our ASTM in the US, correct?
Exactly. True that. Maybe as well, a few other things will be in metric or based on the European standards. But at the end, this is an international ISO norm, so it's as well valid for the North American market.
Yeah. Yep. Andreas, if I can just jump in, the ASTM for that is D975.
Yes. Thanks, Alex.
So I want to make sure that there are ratings that you might run into. They're different from this, but do the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Alex. Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's go through the different types and what are the pros and things to be considered. So I start now with HVO, because from the pure CO2 perspective, it's right now the best available alternative to fossil diesel, which means at the end, based on the source out of vegetable oil and so on, so grown plants, it has the possibility to reduce 90% of CO2 at the position or at the location where it's produced. If you're taking it really serious, of course, you have to consider the carbon footprint of the transport from the production facility to the ski resort or wherever you're going to use it. So maybe in reality, it's about 85, 87%, but let's keep it simple. In principle, if you produce it and use it in the same spot, it's minus 90% of CO2 compared to fossil diesel, which is a good sign. Next one, a third less soot. So less fine dust smoke out of the exhaust, which is a good one. Less NOx, so about 9% less nitrogen oxides. And it's not that prominent in the media, but a few nitrogen oxide variants are way worse for the climate change than CO2. So as well, that's a very good news that the NOx is reduced. And last but not least, the CO emission is as well reduced by 20%. So that's in principle, let's say, all too good to be true. What to be considered here, in addition, there is a better cold start ability because it has a lower flammable point, which helps this fluid to be easy in the cold start condition, which as well compensates partially the lower energy density. So that would be, let's say, on the counter side, it's a bit lighter and the lower energy density than normal diesel, which is counterbalanced with this lower flaming point. And we have seen in real side-by-side comparison that the overall consumption of a vehicle is even lower compared to a diesel for a few percentage points, but not higher what you could expect just from the energy density and this simple chemistry parameters. There is low till no smelling, so everything what you have in your nose, it's completely not there compared to a diesel. As well, the if you spill out and so on, so it's not harming your skin and so on. As well, from this perspective, benefits compared to normal diesel. What you have to consider is the availability, but we're coming to this one in the next step. Why can I talk so much about this one? Because we have already a few years experience with this one. While we were just the guys who were burning this liquid in our snowcats, but a customer was really into this one already a few years ago and did really a big improvement. And I collect now a few informations here. So I'm talking about a ski resort conglomerate in Scandinavia called SkiStar. They are owning 6 different ski resorts along Sweden and Norway. And they were starting in 2016 with the first tests towards the HVO. They completely turned their fleet in, I think, 2018. And just as an example, in the year 2019, there have been the Ski World Championships in Åre in Sweden. And this full championship was already fully supplied with HVO on all the snow grooming vehicles, which was, by the way, from our fleet. And they are still going in this direction. And Scandinavia, in general, from a global perspective, is here the front runner because they have started already 6-7 years ago in a bigger scale of producing and using this type of liquid, which leads to a state of, and I think that was even a number from last year, 25% of the trucks on road are already running completely on HVO. Here I have a slide from a joint presentation from the purchasing manager from SkiStar who was running the operation. So he was the operation director for all those 6 ski resorts. And on this graph, just to a simple explanation, we see the evolution of the HVO per year, which is the far left one, the diesel, the gasoline, and the overall CO2 footprint out of 70 grooming machines, 200 cars, 10 wheel loaders, and as well the transportation buses inside the ski resorts. So long story short, I think the graph itself speaks on its own. Let's put this Bordeaux red column here, which in 16-17 was still about 6 million kilograms of CO2 in that year, and it was reduced to below 1 million because of implementing the HVO. So that's, of course, a nice number to see and to as well count the benefit, the environmental benefit regarding the HVO introduction. We see this one as well because the shift from the HVO, so this bright red, to the gray, bright gray one, which is the diesel version, completely swapped in the other way. And as you can see, there's barely diesel still in use. The gasoline, interestingly, was increased a bit if you read it correctly, but that has just a tax and Swedish local government reason why there is now a bit more gasoline, because the hybrid vehicles they are using for their normal cars and fleets, they have to run with gasoline. But those are details. I think the main message here is within 6 to 7 years, a tremendous reduction of the CO2 footprint overall. I'm so shifting to the next version or next best possibility, which is available and already in use, which is the GTL. So GTL, gas to liquid, coming out of natural gas. I think the main, it's not a monopole, but the majority globally from the production is coming from Shell. They are doing this since the 70s already. So it's as well from the depreciation of the production facilities and so on, already in a very good industrialization phase. That's why as well there is a cost delta between the HVO and the GTL. Nevertheless, I could sum up in an easy way all the benefits what we have just discussed with HVO. You can more or less apply directly to the GTL, except the CO2. Why? Because the source is coming here from natural gas, which is a fossil soil. So in all the official way of counting this one, you cannot state here a CO2 reduction because it's a fossil soil source. So that's the topic. All the other things, reduction of sulfur, reduction of smell, reduction of carbon, and so on, is the same or in a similar way as the HVO. As well there, we see the capabilities of low temperatures going even better compared to a few years ago. So we're reaching here minus 35 Celsius, which Alex, you have to help me in Fahrenheit on this one.
Almost the same.
Okay. So, and that's as well something, and I'm anticipating, if you have a source of an alternative fuel, take care about the temperatures, which is not always given if there is HVO or GTL printed on the fuel. What we have seen as well, which by the way is the same on the HVO, due to the lower NOx, so nitrogen oxide emission, as well the DEF injection, or AdBlue as it's called here in Europe, is reduced. I haven't found a study or really countable numbers on snow grooming use, but we have found an on-road truck comparison where they're running the same engine just for the on-road application as we do on our light work vehicle. And they are stating a reduction of 8% of the DEF consumption because of the general lower amount of emissions. So as well, a secondary effect out of these alternative fuels. Similar range is valid for the HVO as well. I think I have everything here. Yeah, the same lower flammable point helps regarding the cold start capabilities. The GTL is as well classified as non-toxic, which as well helps sometimes in the transport or in the storing inside your ski resorts. And yeah, last but not least, it is not capable, at least in the European Union, to count it in your CO2 balance because of the fossil source of it. And now we're coming to the, in theory, best way you could do, but it's not available yet. So that is the so-called e-fuel. And as mentioned before, take the CO2 out of the air, take hydrogen, which was built out of renewable energies, bake it together, and if you burn it, you have just a circle out of the CO2, and that would be, in theory, the best one. Downside here, all the big investments yet have been done not on our diesel, which we would like to use. For the simple reason, as I learned, the production facilities are focused on one or the other type of diesel. And since the airplane industry and also the big ships and vessels have to do something in the direction and they don't have really alternatives, all the big investments yet were going into this one and creating more a kerosene-like e-fuel instead of the diesel one. So they cannot swap it in this or the other way in an easy manner. Nevertheless, the German car industry and the lobby were forcing a bit to the direction that also the European Union will count in the future this type of liquid into the CO2 fleet calculation. So that means as well, all the car manufacturers now, and that's just a few months old, have an interest in having e-fuel available, which keeps their combustion engines alive, which is not only for the Porsche 911 interesting, but now as well for all the other big players. Yeah, so as mentioned before, the reasons I'm not too optimistic that we will see too much of this liquid in our ski resorts around the world in the next 10 to 20 years, because the big amount will be used in other businesses. And even there, based on a recent study I read, the projection up to 2035 seems that there are going to be a much higher, they're talking about 10 times higher demand of e-fuel versus the today's planned production facilities. So they are not even built. Everything what is planned till 2035 is maybe just a tenth of what's going to be needed to really cover all the needs, which maybe is a bit exaggerated in one or the other direction, but I guess the main message is clear. That's very interesting, but maybe not for us in the first shot. Okay, considerations, things which we have learned, figured out together with other customers which have done this step already. So first of all, GTL and HVO coming out of the Alps area and the Scandinavian area, there's a big demand and a big pull from the market, which of course brings on the other side the capacities of the production up, which means we are very confident that in the future the availability of those two liquids going to be pretty good. What you should think if you want to implement this one, what is your fueling concept? Do you have excess the whole year round? Do you have one big tank which will feed you through the winter? And this as well from the logistic needs to be aligned with your fuel partner, that you're not running out of fluid during the season. The good news is, as mentioned before, in the engine, you can blend it. So it's without any effect and so on. So if you're running out of the HVO, you can mix it or fill it afterwards with diesel and going the other way back. What you should consider, and I cannot judge, I just know it from a few European countries, there's a different tax on the different liquids, which means you are not allowed to blend this one in your tank in the ski area. In the vehicle, they don't care, but the storage and the tank has to be separate from the fossil diesel. I don't know if that's valid on your end, just something to think about. If you need, if you change everything, then it's no problem. If you still run both in parallel for a certain period, just think about that there might be a tax or a legal topic in the background. Regarding the energy density, so I told you regarding the benefit that the cold start ability is good, that it's as well compensating then from the overall consumption perspective. One thing which maybe is a topic, maybe not, due to the different density, if you have a level sensor, which is a swimming element and not just with sonic or something like this one, consider there's a different density and there's a different floating behavior if you have such topics. I know it's going a bit in details right now, but those are the things which created aha moments on other customer sites, so we don't need to repeat this stuff. The costs, and here I'm of course very well, I don't know about the North American market price regarding this one, and as well here is based on all the crazy up and downs with the fuel prices and so on. I'm just here now referring to the average cost comparison in May 2022, so 1 year ago. We have seen that the GTL back in that days was about 10% more than the diesel, and the HVO in average was about 36% more than the diesel, which has a lot to do with the the HVO, for whatever reason, is linked to the barrel of raw oil. And so if the oil is going up, the HVO is following right away. A bit of time difference, which has nothing to do with each other. And that is something which the politicians has to solve, because from the production and from all the other aspects, there is no reason why they should be linked. These are just a few side informations for you. Regarding cost and availability, you have much better ways to figure out how it works on your end. Yeah, the temperature capability, we have spoken a bit about it. So I always recommend go down to minus 35 Celsius, because it just can happen. And if it's just one day per year, it just sucks if you're having here the clogged filter because the HVO or GTL was getting stuck in there. We have seen as well a few suppliers which are offering different levels, like Total, and I don't bash Total now. It was just interesting on a fair for snow grooming and the ski industry. They were as well promoting HVO, but when I asked regarding the temperature level, they are going on the cold filter plugging point, so the CFPP minus 27 Celsius, and all the other big ones like Shell or Neste or BP are going down to minus 35, 34, which obviously is way better and gives you much more security that works out. Yeah, the compatibility, depending on what you want to do with this one, always consider, I'm now talking a lot about snow grooming engines and so on, but if you want to run trucks and all the other stuff, just verify if those engines are able to cope with this type of fluids. Modern engines normally don't have too much problems. There is a certain range in the last 10 years where maybe there is something, and the very, very old ones, they don't care anyhow what you burn. But just as a heads up, take care where you fill this type of fuel that the engine is able to work with it. And I think that I touched already in the beginning regarding the real CO2 effect, and as well the carbon footprint of where to bring it, and as well the blending capabilities of HVO 30, where you have 30% of HVO compared to HVO 100, where you have 100% of HVO. And that's everything what I wanted to share with you in a quick manner.
Fantastic, Andreas. That was a really useful and helpful presentation. A lot of data in that, and I'm glad that we are recording. At this point, why don't we roll over to City of Vancouver, Dan and Chuck, and hear about your experience using renewable diesel. Then we can roll on to Randy at Bend and hear about their experience in North America, higher elevation and really cold temps. And then we can open the discussion with other members from Prenoth or our user group that are looking to use renewable diesel here with any questions that they have. So Dan.
Can I jump in for a second, Bonnie? I have
Chuck.
I wanted to clarify. HVO, hydrotreated vegetable oil, is analogous to renewable diesel. Can you confirm that, Andreas? I think that's not a typical term we use in the US, but I think they are the same.
I would say yes. Can you specify your renewable diesel? Because the FAME type of biodiesel, that's a different one. And that's there we have a different precondition, and especially on a few manufacturers of engine, this one is not allowed on modern ones because that's very aggressive and has a high, I think it's an acid pH value, which can be harmful for ceilings, and it's as well flushing out all the sediments and what's it called? It's not the things which can grow and which can contaminate the diesel, which is just flushed out of the tank. So be
Yeah, we're not-
careful. The
We're
pain
not
is
talking
not
about
the same.
biodiesel. Yeah, we're not talking about biodiesel. And we have to make sure everyone realizes biodiesel or same fatty acid methyl ester is different from HVO or
Yes.
renewable diesel. They are very different and we don't want to conflate the two. But I believe HVO is just another term for renewable diesel, but not one that we typically use, at least in our region. But they are the same, just so everyone knows what he was talking about is renewable diesel.
I assume so. And as we touched before, if we can just double check the norm or the specification, even though the product name is different, then we are 100% sure.
Yeah, I can confirm that's what our HVO is, what we're talking about when Cypress uses it. It's equivalent to renewable diesel.
Thanks, Amy. So Chuck and Dan,
Yeah, so why don't I almost pass it down to give Chuck's experience with alternative or the renewable diesel in the fire apparatuses and his equipment that we use. We can touch on the maintenance and the regen, all of that. Then Jake, you want to kind of talk about our experience in the main fleet and then your purchasing of the fuel and kind of go into that a little bit, please. Go ahead, Chuck. And then maybe we can switch over and talk to Randy.
yes,
Have him be the next one out of this group to talk about how his experience and how long and all of his tests that he's done for Deschutes County.
yes, the city fleet experience is fantastic as well.
Okay, Chuck, go ahead, bud.
Yeah, we're a fairly decent department here in the state of Washington. We have we go on 45,000 calls a year. We have 11 mainline engines and 2 mainline trucks. And we were experiencing regen problems, call-ups probably 3 or 4 times a week. And we were also having to change our fuel filters, probably within a 3-month period, we would change our fuel filters probably twice within that time. And when we started running renewable diesel, we haven't gotten a regen problem call to this day. And we could go over a year before we have to change our fuel filters on our apparatus. And maintenance wise, it's just injectors, more power, burns cleaner. DPF filters are not getting stopped up, so it's just it's taking about I would say 50 hours road calls a month away from us having to go after regen or death problems. So it's been just a great maintenance issue that helped us tremendously. So I really can't think of anything else other than we really haven't done a cost per mile, but I've just noticed that we're getting more power out of our vehicles with the renewable diesel, and we can bring them here in the shop, and we don't get fogged up with a lot of hydrocarbons here in the shop while we're doing maintenance work. So it's been a bright spot for us as far as service calls and maintenance on our vehicles.
I had a question there. Have you guys weighed or the benefits of the emissions for the operators of the vehicles while on call? I get it in the shops, it's helpful too, but is that ever something you guys weighed in your decision? Is the benefits for the users of this equipment?
Yeah, that was a big deal because we don't run exhaust fans in our bays. So all of those complaints about smelling in the truck bays have all gone away. But I don't know if that answered your question or not, but yes, it was to me, it was part of the decision that I wanted to get renewable diesel.
Yeah, if we could go back to the slide we just watched, if you saw the very far bottom right corner of the flames that were burned. Renewable diesel was the same thing. It doesn't have the hydrocarbons, so it's a lot lower hydrocarbons. We don't have any issues on that in bays or on the calls or at the site, because it is a more superior product than the fossil fuel.
So like our regions, we were, we don't know when they regen all the time, but we kept getting calls about regen problems. But I've kind of kept track of the regen on our engines, and we went from, I would say, regenning every other day to regenning maybe even once a month. And most of the time, it's not a set still and do a passive regen. It's regenning as you're going down the road. So it's not it's not a manual regen. Now it's a passive regen as they're going to and from calls. So it cut our regen, golly, probably 90% of our regen problems, and 90% of the regens itself. Because to do a manual regen, it takes anywhere from 20 to 40 minutes. So if you have a fire, if you have 6 of your fire stations that have to do a manual regen, so you have six stations that are out of service at the same time for a manual regen. So all the manual regens went away. They're mostly all passive regens, and they went from twice a week to maybe twice a month.
Jake?
Hello. So my experience has been on the purchasing side, along with some of the maintenance side on. So Chuck, he does just fire. We do police and public works at our shop. So all the sweepers, all the vectors, anything that's the big machinery comes through our shop. It's echoing the same thing. And also, I don't know, does everybody know that renewable diesel comes in different blends? So for instance, we're only using R20 right now, but we're going to step it up to R50 here soon. So, we should see either greater improvement or maybe not that much, because it's only just an incremental increase in the renewable. But, and the only reason we're doing that, well, one of the only reasons, not only to show some improvement as we go, but the cost between the ultra low to R99, we have to budget for that as we go along through our biennium budget years. And so that's another reason why we're stair stepping it, to kind of smooth out those costs. Now, as for supply, we have 2 sources. We can get it off our state contract, Washington state contract, or we can do what we were doing up until this last December, which was we had a co-op, which if you can band together your usage of R99 with other people around you to bring the supply to your area, it brings the cost down, and plus it brings that demand to you. So we partnered with our Clark County, City of Vancouver, Longview, Cowlitz County, C-Tran, which is our transit authority in the area, and then our local utility, which is Clark Public Utilities. They run R99, but they're a utility, so they have money. And so, and another thing is, because we have a port right next, Port of Portland and also Tacoma up north, that helps our situation getting the supply to our area. But it's been night and day between using our state contract compared to our co-op contract, the one that we partnered with all those municipalities. The state contract, I don't know why they went with this vendor, but they're not like like if you talk to the supplier of R99, Nestle, the biggest one, they're saying, well, they're not on our list, or they're, not one of our vendors we deal directly with, but the one we had on the co-op was, and there's a big price difference that we're seeing. So we just renewed that co-op contract, and we're going to jump back onto that, and we should see a better pricing, and then also supply. That was the other thing too. The people that won that state contract, we'd turn in an order, and they'd be like, well, I won't have it till next week. And we're like, well, we'll be out of fuel by then. And so, and then they would get back to me, oh, you know, give us a couple days, we'll find some. And then they'd give me an email saying, okay, we found some, expect it the next day. So that's another big thing to consider in your purchasing. And yeah, and we just dropped it right on top of the diesel we had. We didn't have to clean our tanks or do anything like that. We just put it in there. We do clean our tanks on a cycle, but when we switched it over, we'd already pretty much cleaned it, you know, probably 6 months to a year before. So we just dumped it right on top. And anything else I wanted? I think that's about it, unless you guys had any questions regarding.
Let me throw in on that what Jake was talking about, also our fuel filters, but that also touches our fuel filters on our dispensers. We're not going through them, even though they're on a preventive maintenance cycle, but we're not replacing those filters in between or having issues on that since we've gone to renewables.
Oh, and if you know, I'm guessing that at a ski lodge you probably have an emergency generator. So storing diesel in a fuel tank for long term, like the ones in our on our city at all of our buildings, they are tests. They're fired up and go through a load test every month. But before that, they were just sitting, and they had just regular diesel in them. And so they would, you know, you run into the water, the separation. But even if we weren't load testing them on the frequency we are now, we'd be very comfortable with just not putting R99 in the tank and just letting it, you know, be as it is.
Okay.
Hey, one more question. Jake, do you remember on the co-op, out of the groups that are involved, what the total gallons of that is that gets the attention of suppliers? Have you heard a recent number on that one?
I don't. I know. I think Gary down in Eugene, he puts 2 million on his.
Right. That's what I think our co-op when we started this, because I was involved with it at the beginning. I think we were at 2 million or 2.5 million gallons that we brought to the table that grabbed some attention to some fuel suppliers. So there's an advantage of doing a co-op for that plus the pricing. Okay.
And we're trying to add our port of Vancouver as well to that contract. They've reached out and want to jump on that contract, so that'll bring even more gallons demand to that.
So us with Clean Cities, after we had a meeting with Janet and some other guys there, see what they're doing there. We are looking into co-op for each state, Wyoming, Montana, and possibly Idaho. But there's some hurdles we're running into. It's like for government entities only, so the public would have a hard time, which seems to be the bigger consumer, at least with this group of people. Do you guys have other companies, or is it all government agencies co-op purchasing?
It's the only thing that I guess would be different would be a public utility. But no, it's all a municipality or utility.
So we're looking on ways to do something similar, maybe have two different co-ops, but one that we can all benefit from, ski hills and government agencies.
Okay, Randy, you want to chime in? Thanks, Jake. Or are you through, Jake? Or are you good? Okay, Randy?
Okay, I echo the maintenance stuff. I'm not gonna dwell on that because that seemed to be pretty well explained. We run R99, and in Oregon, we're blessed with a trade system like an offset. The polluters pay for credits, and then that on the backside we don't see it. It's at the supplier level, but we do see the price change, but it's not something we have to report or be involved with. So I am 3 to 5 cents higher than B5, which is the standard Oregon fuel, which is 95% ultra low sulfur and 5% bio required as just a baseline fuel. So very, very competitive. I don't have the price issue, so I can run full strength with no budget constraints. I don't have any ruling over me as far as what I should be running. This is totally voluntary by our fleet, by me. We started early, but in 2018, Oregon had an issue with this is, and I'm talking about the Neste product. That's all I've ever had, you know, that's all we've ever used. But in 2018, that was the only fuel available. And they used palm oil in it, like a high percentage of palm oil. And our blend that we were purchasing had that. So we lost our supply in Oregon from Neste in 2018, just for, I'm going to say 6 months. I don't remember how long it was. So we had to switch back, which did give us a chance to transition back to diesel and then, or ultra low sulfur B5, and then back into renewable. And we didn't have any issues with that transition, but we did have that little hiatus from it. But what I really want to talk about is back in 2009 in Oregon, we switched to ultra low sulfur diesel and 2% bio in the same year. And we dropped to, I'm going to say roughly -20. And the entire Central Oregon area, anything that was diesel, the fuel turned to a solid block inside the tank. I worked for the Cat dealership at the time, and all of our service trucks were down. Everyone was calling. My own pickup didn't make it to work. It was an absolute nightmare. And this is the thing that keeps me up at night, is that ever happening again? Now that I'm in a public role, which in 2010, I came to the county, I have made it my mission to try and have fuel that will never have that situation again, because even the emergency vehicles couldn't move. We couldn't plow, the county couldn't plow snow. I remember being called, "What are you guys doing?" And it's like a space heater in 3 hours, the only way to get a vehicle going. And there's only so many space heaters, and it was just an absolute nightmare. So through the years, I just stressed about it, but about, I guess it was 2 years ago, I bought a freezer for my office, a -50 freezer, and put it in the corner of my office, started pulling fuel samples and comparing different fuels, and just very non-scientific, but it's just, I mean, if you put -35 in your freezer and your fuel is still clear, I can sleep at night. I know that if it's -35 out, like, it doesn't matter what a lab says or anything. It just, I know that, you know, that I'm safe. And that's -35 Fahrenheit, but it's very close to Celsius at that level. So within a couple of degrees. But that's something I've watched very closely. And one thing I found in my first year of doing it, and then this year it happened again, is that we don't really see the true winter blend from Neste until like rolling into January. And that's scary for me because we get cold temps in November. I've seen it like below -20 before. It's been a few years since we've had, but it just takes one of those events. So through the distribution system, because it has to go through multiple tanks before it gets to us, there's this big delay. I was talking to one of the representatives from Neste, and when I told him about that, I asked him, "When do you start your winter blend?" They start in October, and we're not seeing it until December. The actual effect, you know, of my jars in my freezer, it gets better and better and better, but we don't truly hit winter blend until almost January. So that's something just to think about when a fuel company is saying, "Oh, we have winter blend," and it starts in October, but does it in your tank? And it's really, really critical to know that. And I mean, when he realized it in our conversation, he almost ran away from me to go make phone calls, because it was during that time of year, and it was just like, it blew his mind, because he said that wasn't that way, and he's like, "Wait, you're Oregon," and then he thought about it, and it had a lot of impact. So hopefully they'll do something in the future to mitigate that. But the value of that little freezer in my office, and you got to, you know, it's a $2,000 mini freezer, because you have to get beyond a normal freezer, it costs a lot more. But I just went to -50 capability. So I just keep pulling samples. We sometimes will pull them from the truck and from our pump. Our pump's the most important one, but sometimes I want to see what's coming in. Preferably I would every time, but it's hard to catch the truck. They come at all hours. So that hasn't been a consistent thing. And next year I'm going to keep a log. I didn't this year. It's been for my own use, and there's a lot of interest in what I'm doing, like from the state of Oregon and from the fuel supplier. They're always calling me to see what my fuel's doing. And so I probably ought to take it a little more seriously and actually gather some data from it.
That's a really good idea for fleet. It's something I hadn't think of. I mean, I had -50s in the lab I worked in and I played around with stuff like that, but that's a really affordable peace of mind to help you sleep at night. I think that's something I'm going to pass on to people.
Yeah, it's changed my world. I genuinely stressed about it. I mean, that was just on my mind all the time, and it has fully lifted that. And if there's a problem, I can deal with it quickly. And we thought we were having a problem, and that's a whole long story, and we weren't. But we actually had, like on an emergency, a load of we brought in a kerosene mixed load to cut it with kerosene. It actually hurt its ability, like it gelled a little bit worse than the non-kerosene mix. When I finally got it in my freezer, it happened on a holiday weekend, and it was just like a panic. We didn't have time to check freezers. It ended up being a pump issue that was not gelled up. We thought we were gelling, but the idea of cutting it with kerosene, and I'm not a chemist. I wish I was. I'd understand a lot more, but running 10% kerosene actually hurt it by about 5 degrees. It didn't help it. So that's full R99, and then adding 10% kerosene to it, so it'd be R90 and kerosene, was not helpful. And that it was just something that the state was doing from time to time out of trying to help things. But according to my freezer, it doesn't help. You're stuck with the blend you have when you get it. So it's really critical. You can't dump diesel additive to it. The way it chemically bonds, it doesn't work. So it's important that you have the blend that fits your conditions.
So this gelling issue was back in around 2009, did you say?
Yes.
Yeah, so the Neste back then was probably coming from Finland or probably from Singapore at that point. Was it American made?
We didn't even know. No, 2009 I was stating that as the event that causes the stress for the rest of my life because it shut down. That was ultra low sulfur diesel. So we went from whatever diesel was called before ultra low sulfur. They switched to ultra low sulfur and added 2% bio. And we all blamed it on the bio because back then bio was, it's horrible. It's Crisco, but in the end, it ended up being the combination of the two that made it so bad. Until 2016 or 2015, it was at Brian Trice's Clean Cities event, Neste came, Gary Lynch, they had a really cool looking green race car, looked like biodiesel to me. I didn't understand what it was. And Gary Lynch from eWeb in Oregon, he was really the one that spotted it as a different product and then discovered that they were actually for at that time we were probably on B5, they'd upped it. That 5% was being mixed with renewable instead of bio, just as another supply, and found out there was a supply we could buy in bulk. And that was when several of us jumped on board in 2016 and started using it. And I have not had a supply issue. It got really skinny last year. I was getting partial loads for a little while, but I've been blessed as being able to keep a steady supply of it through our supplier. And I know that's not true for everyone, but we've been loyal, and I think we almost get preferential treatment from just our years of being involved with it. But I have never run out since I've used it. It's from a supply standpoint. So other than that 2018 blip.
And Randy, you're running R90?
R99. I only said R90 because that was when we cut it, like when it was cut with kerosene in that specific example, it was basically 90%. But we're purchasing R99 like full strength, that we're We have no reason not to. And in my opinion, it's just a superior fuel. All emissions aside, it's a superior fuel in so many ways.
Randy, what are you paying per gallon for R99?
Ooh, I'll look after I speak.
I didn't even put you on the spot.
Yeah, no, I haven't looked at pricing for a little while, so.
Jake, can you look? I think we've got some current prices of what you have for renewable. Can you look that up too? And I want to just point out that most of us use our freezers to freeze our ice cream. Randy uses his to have quart jars of renewable diesel in his.
So everyone understands California, Washington and Oregon, they all have their LCFS, their low fuel standards, and their fuel is sort of subsidized, and that's why all the fuel we make in our state goes there. We don't have the luxury of that yet. So that's a big hurdle we have, is the cost difference. That's our major hurdle.
I
So,
would
like,
say
what we use-
the only disadvantage is a cost difference compared to fossil diesel. All the rest is just positive.
For us, absolutely.
Yeah, Washington doesn't have the clean fuels credits like Randy was talking about. So that's where he's not going to pay probably even close to $4 or maybe just over $4 as compared to Washington State.
In Montana, last winter, our local fuel supplier quoted us $6.05 a gallon.
So currently with Parkland, what we're asked, and this, we should see this at the pump this week, hopefully here, it's about $1 premium compared to number 2 diesel. So if it's a R50 or 50% blend, you can expect to pay 50 cents more per gallon. That's what we're expecting in Montana, and that should also be the case in Wyoming.
And I've been speaking to Parkland, and based on what everyone's been saying about getting like a co-op pricing, they said that if we came to them with our fuel demand and our addresses for our fuel tanks, they would give us a quote on what we would be looking at. So I think that if we can demonstrate that high demand for our Bozeman, Big Sky region, we have a potential for, getting a better price. They told me like a rail car carries 100,000 gallons, I think is what it was. And that if we can like max out that would help us out too.
Yeah, I think we need to, for our region specifically, we need to be transparent and let them know that we all are on the same page, because I feel if we work directly one business with the fuel distributor, they're going to try and get the highest dollar that they can, and work together, whether that's through a co-op or some other transparent method, we can make sure we're all getting the same. So I think having it at the pump here publicly available, and if you see it's $1 and you at Ski Hill is paying more, you can say, well, why is it only $1 more at the pump and why am I paying $2? So I think the public availability is sort of a transparent way of getting an actual price.
And we have at the city of Vancouver, we have 7 fuel sites just for us. And then you add those other municipalities and starts growing.
So I'm looking at my price right now. I am $2.87 a gallon because we don't. It's the same. So we don't have the $1.36 tax. I have I have 1 cent or a tenth of a cent per gallon of a federal tax, and that's it. So.
Great, that gives us an idea of what to shoot for. Randy, while you're there, could you clarify for me, the cold weather issues that you were having was more with the biodiesel blend and not so much the renewable? If you were having issues with renewable, are you adjusting the level of blend in those low temperature months?
So I have had 0 issues weather-wise with renewable. I think I could have at times had we got a November storm because the winter blend delay that nobody was aware of. That was lurking there, and that became a big concern for me. That's why I actually talk to Neste, who actually, they're very responsive too and easy to talk to. But I have that, the only issue that had happened was with B5, and we've gelled up here, you know, in the years before 2016 when we started running it, we've definitely had issues, and our coldest temperature I've seen is -28, and we got hit pretty hard when it did that, but that was just with treated B5, and we just I haven't had a single issue since then. But we also haven't recently, I mean, there's been some cold stuff, but we've been a few years since we've had like below -20. It's been a little while, but I'm very comfortable at, I mean, I have my freezer set so far beyond what the actual real life issues for us are, you know, that it's just not, we haven't had any problems. It's been perfect. Another thing is when it fails in the freezer, it doesn't just turn to a block. Like ultra low sulfur biomix will just turn into more of it clouds, gets really, really cloudy, and then just turns into a gel. And it seems like, and this is where I'm not a chemist, I'm just looking in jars, but it almost looks like snow in the bottom, like the paraffin drops out to the bottom, and it's still mostly liquid until like -40 and beyond, then it gets really gnarly. But before that, I'm not even sure if it starts to fail that our equipment wouldn't still run and the return fuel wouldn't just melt that. Go ahead.
Imagine putting a bottle of olive oil in your refrigerator. You will see the same effect. It's like snowflakes inside and still a portion of these flakes and the liquid. And the problem in the engine is that those flakes, so to call, it's for sure the wrong term, but it's good enough for us. They are just clogging the filter, and that's creating the issue. Everything else would be fine. And if it's melting fully again, like an olive oil, it's still good and fine and without any damage. That's maybe a simple way to compare it.
Okay, yeah, I've just not got to see it fail, so I appreciate that.
Hey, Randy, there's a question there whether or not there's a winter renewable diesel blend. And I'm not aware of anything, but do you run a specific renewable blend for your winter concerns, or you run a R99 through those up to -20-degree moments?
So the blend is in the manufacturing of the fuel. So we're still running Neste My Renewable R99, but they make the change as we roll into winter. So we aren't, it's their blend, how they manufacture it. And I would be very.
Do you know what that blend is for? They're called winter blend.
It's just the specs of, it's the same fuel. They're just changing their specs with it, I believe, and their manufacturer. They're not mixing it with anything that, to my knowledge. I think they're just, blend is probably the wrong term for it. It's just what we're used to saying, but it's not a blend. Yeah, it's just different formulation.
I think that's important to know is that R99, I mean, you can blend and you have R.5, just like Jake was showing, but it's a chemically made fuel that's what makes it more superior. Algae, all that water does not attract it to renewable diesel at all.
So renewable diesel, petroleum diesel has a range of like C9, so it's 9 carbons up to like C19, so many carbons. So there's a huge range of carbon chain lengths, and petroleum diesel, that's one of the reasons it's so dirty, in addition to all the aromatic compounds. Renewable diesel is a very specific range, and it can be C12 to C16, so we only have 3 carbon length chains. It's a very clean fuel. They can also adjust that to longer chains or shorter chains, depending on how they want to set up the refinery. So the renewable diesel refinery in Wyoming, I can't remember if it's Holly Frontier or Sinclair, but they will be sending a lot of their fuel up to British Columbia and Canada, because Canada's soon going to have their own low carbon fuel standards. So they told me that yes, they will modify that fuel for that region. So the fuel we will get in here will hopefully be more fuel from our region, and they should be blending it to be consumed in our region. If it's specifically for California, they may, if it's cheaper, they may make it a warmer former properties. And if we bring it back up, then we might have to be careful. But I think if we get it from the refineries in our region and they know we're using it here, there shouldn't be any issues.
Very good. Thanks, Randy. Thanks, Jess.
Bonnie, you're muted.
Does anyone else have questions they'd like to pose before we wrap up?
Just some additional comments, Bonnie. Back to Jesse's point about all working together to get a price. Parkland also offered to give us like an informational webinar about the studies they've done on different fuel like users. And they also said that free of charge, they'd be willing to measure our carbon emissions from our use cases just for their own kind of benefit. So just something if people are interested in our area, they're willing to kind of test out like what the emissions are from our fuel tanks, from our equipment. They'll kind of use it in their studies and their promotion of their product. But yeah, so other things we could learn from Parkland or kind of discuss with them as well.
Yeah, if we can get a good price and be part of the testing, that's a great case study.
Dan, did you want to talk about what they're doing at GTSC? They're going to have a tanker truck there to fill up whoever wants to fill up with R99. That's the
Yeah.
show.
Go ahead and explain that, Jake.
Well, I forget who the supplier is, whether it's Carson or who it is, but basically, so in August there's a big show at Tacoma called the Green Transportation Summit and Expo, and Brian Trice, like Jesse mentioned or Randy mentioned, is the director of Clean Cities for Western Washington, and Tony Willamette, which is down towards our area, Oregon and Washington, and this is a show that he puts on, and there's one of his sponsors is going to be there with a truck to fill up whoever wants R99. They'll just fill their tanks to promote it.
So we're going to do something similar as soon as I have the okay, and I know the fuel is in the tanks here. We are going to have some QR codes at the pumps for information, and then we're also going to do a raffle to try and give away some fuel cards as a way to get people to come back. Maybe they could share it, but it's going to be hard to promote it on this short time frame with a small budget. But I think the people who are interested know, and I just hope everyone floods those pumps when we have it, and we show that there is actually a demand.
Yeah, since we'll actually have it in locations that people can refill. In Belgrade, that's only those who have a commercial account.
I think you can. I think anybody can fill there. The
Okay.
commercial fueling network is what it's called, and that gets you to better cost. But anybody can fuel there.
Got it.
And then it'll also be on Griffin. I think at Story Distributing, so there's a closer one for Bozeman.
Yep. So anyone with diesel, we can begin trying it out in our vehicles and.
Yeah, I'll be the first one there with my truck filling up. I intentionally didn't fill it this weekend so that I can fill it with Renewable when we get it.
Fantastic.
So they put renewable diesel in like a commercial pump station in Bend. And it was the first one in Oregon, that wasn't, because we can only buy it in bulk. So this was the first time that it was available to the public. They did a big launch. The internet comments were terrible. Everything was just, it's biodiesel, it's gonna turn solid, and it's gonna this and that, on and on. And I mean, they just beat it to death. It's really, really important that if there's anything public, that it be truly noted that it's renewable diesel and it's not the same as biodiesel. It needs to be promoted as a new product that is superior, and not let the internet get a hold of it before that happens, because it was kind of a mess. And even now I drive by that station and it's just not, they also sell biodiesel and you can't even tell that it's there. Like, it's just not promoted, and I'll bet they're not very successful with it. There's a premium price on it and nobody knows what it is. They did a very poor job at educating the public on what they were selling. So it's just,
And that's why we're at the Green Transportation Conference, and why that renewable diesel tank is going to be there, is for just what you're talking about, Randy, is educating those. It's part of the ride and drive that we're putting together. So all of the diesel that this company, and I should know who that is, and I apologize, is I'm the president of both coalitions, and I work really close with Brian Trice, but I don't remember who it is, but they're bringing in a tanker, and whatever diesel product we're driving in that ride and drive is going to go home with a fresh tank of renewable diesel. But that's how we start educating. We have to share the right information out so people don't crisscross and get sideways on this, because renewable diesel is here to stay. I personally think it's the future wave of diesel because of what it brings to the table. I mean, just all we've talked about. The benefits of reducing maintenance costs, reducing greenhouse gas emissions. What a better product to start using. One thing that I would like to ask the group would be, especially those that are in maintenance, have we covered all your concerns and questions before we end? And sorry, Bonnie, if I'm jumping ahead, but
No.
I just want to make sure that those members here are left with no questions that they wish they could ask. So anyway.
I think one of the big questions directed maybe to Prenoth regarding the CAT C9 engine and running the HEUI injector, and how those engines handle renewable, if there is any difference.
Based on my information, the Caterpillar engine manufacturer is signing off the renewable diesel or HVO also to the older versions, including those with the UE pumps.
Does
I
any of
haven't seen anything. Go ahead, Jason.
in Vancouver or Ben, do you guys run any equipment with HUE fuel systems?
Mhm. Yeah, we have some 7.3 power strokes,
Mhm.
and we even got some 6-liter. Well, those weren't, but we do have some 7.3 power strokes. We don't have very many Cat, at least the older Cat.
Did you have any issue? I mean, they're kind of a sensitive fuel system that we've seen with those, in the past. So you didn't see any change in that fact?
I think the only thing we've ever had to really be careful with was the type of oil we've been using in HUEs rather than the fuel.
Mhm.
Making sure we're using that, try to keep that as up to or close or as spec as possible rather than the fuel itself.
And that's what I've read, is the oil change interval and the quality of oil is improved when running renewable diesel compared to petroleum diesel.
That's what I was going to point out. So we have quite a few HUEs running in our system. Our Kodiak snowblower has a C9 JSC serial number, which was the earlier ones, which were also in a lot of the snowcats up at Mount Bachelor. They had a lot of injector issues anyway, specifically in that serial number engine, but we haven't had really any issues in ours. But it is oil cleanliness on HUE, and the benefit of a cleaner fuel. Having cleaner oil is going to have a positive effect on a HUE. And I have a Cat that, with my Cat background, I dealt with all that, went through all those years of the issues with the HUEs, and I'm very comfortable with renewable diesel on that. And other companies will say that, like bio companies say that, well, there's less lubricity in the renewable diesel, but it's so minute, and I'm going to say you're going to have less injector failures just in general on all types of the equipment, just because it's such a cleaner fuel going in. It's such a critical part of injector life, is clean fuel going into your tank as a supply. It's an engineered fuel, and it's just so much cleaner than ultra low sulfur diesel bio.
And on a related note, this late in 2022, renewable diesel production in the U.S. surpassed biodiesel production, and And I mean, they use the same feedstocks, so we can expect biodiesel to slowly start going away. There's a few applications where it's better, but overall renewable diesel is superior. So all the cooking oil, vegetable oil is all going to go to renewable diesel. And we're going to there's going to be less bio available, but it's already surpassed bio. And I think we can almost forget about it, although it is in people's minds. So we need to assure everybody that it is a different fuel, but renewable diesel is where everything's going, and it's pretty much the best fuel.
There's a local distributor, REG, that's here, or a refinery. They're offering a R80 B20 blend. Like they just came out with it. I don't know anything about it, but I don't know if that's even worth looking at.
There is a blend. I don't know if it's that one specifically, but there's an RB blend that is better than either fuel. It's something similar to what you said. I think it might be 85-15 or 85-10 and 5, but that's the ultimate emission benefit blend. There's some research on that out there, but I think the extra handling cost and the complexity of dealing with multiple components is probably not worth it. But there is for emissions, that's the ultimate. There's one better up from renewable diesel.
Okay, so the REG Ultra Clean, it clouds way above 0 degrees. Like it is, I put it in at +5 into my freezer. I got a sample and it turned into a solid, like you could tip the jar over and it didn't move at +5. Like it's not okay for winter use. And that was what was being discussed. It was actually made out to be that renewable, like the R99 had poor winter flow characteristics and this had good winter flow characteristics, and it was absolutely the opposite. So I would, and that's just the particular sample that I had, and then there was a test done by ODOT in a lab, and the results were not good for if you have any winter concerns at all.
Yeah, emissions, apparently that's what all they were touting, and what I read was the emissions are better, and that could be in warm climates. But if there's any cold weather questions, that should just be off the table pretty much for us.
If there's no further questions, I can't tell you how much I appreciate everyone joining us. It was extremely informative, and I think, as Amy pointed out, we can follow up with our supplier and do another information session with them directly. And then it looks like those of us in the Gallatin Valley region and beyond in Montana that are wanting to move forward will need to continue our talks in the chances of forming a co-op or at least some type of a buying group. And Jesse, are you taking the lead on that?
Yeah, it's one of the 10 things we're working on. It's in the back of our mind, but yes.
Yeah.
We have interest in that. And I also want to thank everybody. This is a great group of people. We have yet to have manufacturers. Well, we had one before on a talk, but I think this is a great group of people, and I also appreciate everybody's time.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Have a good one.
Thank you, everyone.
Sure.